Good evening, everybody, and welcome to From the Archive, a British television live chat. My name is Greg Bakken, and I appreciate you all joining me this evening. For those of you in the U.S., I especially appreciate you joining me in the afternoon. After all, it's summer over here, but at least in the Twin Cities, I think we're going to get some storms over here. So if we, by chance, get knocked out, it might be because of storms, but we should be fine. I just wanted to thank everyone for joining in. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Timeslip. Now, as many of you know, I try to do these on a monthly basis, but life has been a little bit crazy over the July, completely off, forget it. But we are certainly trying to do it as much as possible. So if there's other subjects, other topics, other shows you want me to focus on, just put it into the comments. Let me know. I'm always looking for new ideas, new people. There's a couple people from Alexandra Palace that we're trying to get on. There's a lot of different things. We also have a cool announcement that we're going to do in a little bit. I do want to temper you all, though, just because, my mind would go the same place a lot of people's would go. It's not missing episode related. We haven't found any color recordings of Timeslip unless Steve is going to announce it that he didn't tell me about. So it's nothing to do with anything like that, but it is Timeslip related. It is pretty cool. We'll talk about it. Hopefully you all think it's cool like I do as well. I also just want to ask folks, if you would, to share this video out. If you're on the Kaleidoscope page watching, you cannot do that, and that's fine. But if you're on the From the Archive, if you are on Twitter, you could retweet it, or YouTube, if you want to just let people know that it's happening. I would greatly appreciate it, because we do this so that hopefully people would be interested and take part in it as well. So please consider doing so. Also, I do run a Patreon page, and it starts as low as I think $3 a month, $2 a month, something like that. If any of you know what I do podcasts, I do videos, I do a lot of other things, and that just keeps the creativity going. I know that times are tough and everything like that, and I'm putting the link into the comment section. But if anybody is interested in helping me out, I would greatly appreciate it. Right now, I will admit it's a little Doctor Who heavy, but we have some other stuff. I have a podcast that is as I was just telling Steve, we have about 6 or 7 interviews that we haven't released yet, including Kevin McNally and other ones. So all of that, anyone who would consider helping me helps me greatly with all of that. So thank you very much. And I also want to remind folks, this is a very interactive conversation. We're going to have Steve on here. It doesn't mean that I have to ask all the questions. And I'm going to be honest, there's a lot of Timeslip I do not know. But what you can do is you can put a comment into the comment section, and I can put it up so that everyone can see it. And then Steve can see it, and we can ask the question, and we can get answers and all that good stuff. And basically, that is a great way to keep the conversation going. We're going to be around for an hour or over an hour, depending on the content, whether or not I bore Steve to death. So there's just a lot of that. So we have a great conversation lined up. Like I said, Timeslip isn't exactly one that I'm a completely, there's so much to it, and there's a lot of great pieces like that beyond the television show that Steve is going to fill me in on, and hopefully you. And then if there's stuff that you want to talk about, then we can certainly do that too. So thank you very much. Why don't we bring in right now Mr. Steve Hardy? Thank you very much, Steve. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you, Greg?
I'm good. Thank you very much. It's been busy trying to get things ready for this, as well as some other stuff. And we have, I just, before we get any further, I'm just going to thank Steve. We got an announcement, and Steve has been instrumental in helping me. And I just thank you so very much for that. I really do appreciate that. So Timeslip is one that has kind of piqued my interest from the late 80s. And the reason why that is that, and one more thing I'm going to put in, because I just see a comment there that might fall into this. If you have not seen Timeslip yet, just know that we will be talking about probably a lot of different things that might be spoilery. We're going to show some stuff that might be spoilery. Please know that. I don't want to lose any viewers, but if that is something you are kind of waiting on, just know we're kind of going with the assumption that most of you have seen Timeslip. It's been around for a little while, so it's been around it's going to be 52 years in September, which is it's going to be pretty cool to talk through that. But I was going to say, my first time ever seeing anything to do with Timeslip is a picture, and it might have even been from the Doctor Who book, The Time Traveler's Guide, and there was just a picture of Simon and Liz, and it's just a kind of poor quality black and white image, and it's just them looking, kind of not even looking at each other, not even looking at the camera. And that alone, knowing it was from the 70s, the name Timeslip, all of it was extraordinarily interesting to me. And it wasn't for probably another 10 years at least or so before I got to see it. What about you, Steve? Where does the story for Timeslip begin with you?
It begins on the 28th of September 1970.
I thought so.
Yes, I was there on the ground floor. But I have to make a confession at this point. I never saw the first few minutes of the first episode until it came out on VHS because I missed it. I can still remember vividly what happened. The house we lived in at the time, you came out of the kitchen, you went through the living room to get to the stairs. And I came out of the kitchen, and my brother, who's 18 months my junior, was sat cross-legged in front of the TV, and all I could see on it was these kids crawling in and out of a hole in a fence. And I said to Richard, my brother, I said, "Well, what are you watching?" And literally his answer was, "It's about two kids that have crawled through a hole in a fence." And I thought, well, this is not really that engaging. So I stood and watched it for a minute, and then I sat down and watched it, and then I was in. I was taken into it, I kind of, as the saying goes, I never look back.
What took you in? What was it? Because what was it? Was the concept of the program that took you in, or what do you think it was that took you in?
Well, I was at the time, I think my birthday is 20th September, so I'd just turned 6 at the time. So a lot of the concepts were kind of over my head,
right?
But there were quite a few things. There's sort of subjective things and there's objective things. Objectively, of course, it was superbly written. It looked great, even though there wasn't a lot of money spent on it. And one of the technical things that made it stand out was that the location stuff was all shots outside broadcast.
All of it for the entire series?
There's one bit in Year of the Burn-Up that was shot on film. There's only one bit of that. But it was shot on. It was the equipment that they used was actually used for sports broadcasts at weekends, and during the week the equipment didn't get used. So they utilised this outside broadcast equipment, and they had a sort of a dish on a church tower some miles away, and they bounced the signal off it back to the studio. And the reason they did that was Ruth Boswell, who she created the series, and she was the script editor, but she had a lot of fingers in the pie of this thing, and she disliked what was common practice in TV back then, where you would do all your location work on film and your studio stuff was on video. So if a character walked outside, in a house, and they walked out into the yard, you suddenly got this jar where the picture changed.
Yep.
Timeslip looked real. It looked like it was happening. It was so engaging because it was live.
Yeah.
It looked live. So that kind of drew me in. And the other thing, which is kind of exclusive to me, the street we lived on was a dead end, and at the end of it there was some waste ground, and on the waste ground there were concrete posts, and there were some derelict concrete prefabs that had been left over from the war. So at the end of our street we got our own ministry field. So that that played a part in it. But there were, I mean, there's numerous things. The kids were engaging. Significantly, the grown-ups treated them equally. They weren't talked down to. They weren't criticised. They weren't belittled. And it was, there was and the casting as well. I mean, you look at some of the casting in it. Dennis Quilley, who was a massive theatre presence, John Barron, Irish Russell, Derek Benfield. These were all adult, these were all grown-up actors, and they were doing this thing. And of course it was just so well written. Bruce Stewart did such a fantastic job of it. So there was kind of a whole lot of tributaries that fed into this.
And it's interesting that you had mentioned too about the writing of Simon and Liz. And the thing is that they were never written as children.
No, there was a thing that kind of happened in children's TV where, and it started in the 70s, British TV at any rate, that the kids somehow had to be better than the adults. They had to be smarter than the adults. They had to know what was going on, but the adults were always clueless. They were always a couple of steps behind. Liz and Simon weren't written like that. They were written as equals, as I say, that they were on an equal footing.
Yeah.
The discussions that they had, Simon has with Trainer, that's two adults talking to each other.
I was going to just say the same thing. Just thinking about Day of the Clone, where he's in the office with Trainer, and he pushes back on him. Yeah, and they're having a grown-up conversation. So that was kind of nice that you'd got kids who were older than me. Obviously, but they were relatable. So that was a good part of it. Yeah, it certainly was. Now, when you watched it, I mean, you were 6, so that's not too terribly old, I would say. Was that in color? Were you able to get it in color? Did you have a color set, or was it still black and white?
Well, color TV came to Britain in 1969. Although it had a bit of a false start, there was strikes and things. People, technicians using the equipment, but which did affect Timeslip. Some episodes were made in black and white, but at the time we only had a black and white set. And I remember the sort of side story, going up to see an aunt and uncle, and they got colour TV. And the first program I ever saw in colour was Star Trek, the original series. And I remember getting into the car and we were driving away. And I said to my mum, why haven't we got a colour TV? And quite straight face, my mother said, well, we had children instead. So it was a few years before we got a colour TV. But when the repeat run came in 1974, we got a colour TV then. So I did see it in colour second time round.
Now, okay, and that's why, because now people who watch me know I'm, one of my favorite aspects of any of these programs is the archive status of them and whatnot. And if I'm not mistaken, I read that originally only 2 episodes actually went out in black and white, or at least were made in black and white.
It kind of got complicated. I know myself, my colleague Andy Thompson, who tuned in. Hi, Andy. And Jeff Smart, who directed and edited the documentary. Jeff and Andy particularly spent a lot of time trying to figure out which episodes were made in black and white, because you will get episodes where if it was a black and white episode, the cliffhanger will be recorded in black and white, of course.
Mhm.
So when they repeated it the following week, it was going to cause a problem, because if the episode the following week was in color, you couldn't have the reprise being in black and white and then the episode in color. So there was a bit of sort of cross-pollination. And I think we established, Andy will come up, he'll pop up and put me right on this if I'm wrong, that I think the first and last episodes, Day of the Clone, were in color, completely in color.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was elements of the middle 4 episodes that weren't. They were in black and white. There are ways of telling. Again, Andy and Jeff went into the technical aspects of this, and I think we cover it in the documentary. But anyone who's got the network set, if they've got the book with it, there's a book with it which Andrew Pixley wrote, and that
He sure did.
That details what episodes were broadcast or made in black and white.
That would have required me to read, but okay. I'm still learning. Steve is like, okay. So now, because and it might be in the books and stuff, and honestly, I haven't watched the documentary yet either, because I just, you buy stuff and because you don't know if it's going to stick around, because I had the Carlton DVD set originally, and I know that the transfers are basically the same as the Carlton set, which are fine. Yeah. But since I had watched it from there, I hadn't really watched it again. But I need to. But the thing is, do you have any idea? And Andrew does. I call him Andrew because that's how I know him as. I'm not close friends, so I'm not going to dare be familiar. But he says we believe that 2 episodes were made in black and white and 3 were transmitted in black and white. Okay, yeah, that's okay. So that's why I wanted, because as soon as I started to say, well, 2 were broadcast, I was like, well, I don't know that. I read that 2 were made. So now we have everything exists in black and white, with the exception of the 6th episode of the Icebox, Time of the Icebox. Do we have any idea when we think that those color videotapes were wiped or lost? Because I swear I had read or heard that someone suggested that they lasted a lot longer than we all thought.
Yeah. Well, it's a bit of a.
It's a sad story you're going to tell us, Steve.
Well, it's not sad so much as it's a bit of a mystery story, because originally it was, well, if you go back far enough, originally Spencer said that they believed for quite a while that nothing existed of it at all.
Really?
No film recordings, no videotape, nothing. And then they discovered that they did exist, but they were only in black and white. All of them were all black and white 60mm film recordings. And then out of the blue, there was a compilation tape that came out. I think it's called The Best of Children's TV from the 60s and 70s or something like that. It was VHS tape. And there was a clip from Time of the Icebox 6 in it, and nobody quite knew where it came from. So that was a mystery. And then there were rumors circulating that there was an episode of Burn Up that existed in color. But the mystery is, or part of the mystery is, that no one really knows what the fate of the original color tapes was. Some people say that they were just, well, as you know, the practice back in the day was to reuse tapes because they were very expensive. But there was also talk that the Timeslip tapes had been damaged, badly stored, water damaged, so they weren't of broadcast quality. Now that's kind of feasible, but you'd think if they were damaged, there would still be something recoverable maybe in them. But I know that it wasn't as clear cut as it is with, say, Doctor Who, because they could tell you the dates that certain tapes were erased.
Right.
That wasn't the case with Timeslip.
Because you have multiple pieces involved here, because it's an ITV program, it's an ATV production.
Yeah.
Who do you know who took the ATV archive?
It ended up it passed through several hands. And it ended up it's now owned by ITV. But there was it went through several name changes as well, which confused things. But I know the physical archive is in Perivale, which is near London.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't. You probably know that Spencer did a series that followed called Tightrope, which was an espionage series.
Yep.
And it's great interest to Timeslip fans because behind the camera, almost to a man, it was the same production team, and it was written by Victor Pemberton.
Yeah.
And we were trying to trace. We knew there was no colour tapes of Tightrope, and we were trying to find them. And I started to do my sort of. I was trying to find the film recordings, and I started to do my Ian Levine bit.
Don't do that.
Yeah, where I was trying to trace where it was sold abroad.
Okay, yeah.
I tracked down. I called Perivale first, and they said, "Well, yeah, it's one of our series." And I said, "Well, yes, I know that. That's what I'm calling." And they said, "But we haven't got anything in the archive." So I thought, "Well, that's that." But it had been sold. I knew it had gone to TVNZ, New Zealand. So I did some digging around, and I think I tracked that. I think there was one episode known to exist. I think they had Perivale on one episode.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I tracked down another 2 or 3, including actually buying a 16mm print of one of the episodes. And then it was announced by Network that they were bringing it out on DVD because Perivale had got them all anyway. Even though it was on the computer, all the episodes were there. They were in storage. So the archiving of some of these, well, again, you'll notice, it's a bit of a dark art sometimes.
Yeah,
how things are archived. They're not always very well documented either. So this is why things show up when they shouldn't. When they say that they're not there. But I said the fate of the Timeslip tapes is not really well known, and it was the rights, as far as the rights go, because I remember when I met Victor Pemberton, and he was under the impression that they were in the hands of a film company at the time. They got an option for them. And it was around about the time that the Thunderbirds movie came out, the Jonathan Frakes.
Movie. Like 2004 or something like that.
Yeah, so it was a good while ago, but he didn't know because Victor had an option at one time to make a sequel series, which we can probably talk about later.
Sure.
And because Victor always maintained a big interest in times.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember meeting him because I was working for Tom Baker at the time, and I wanted to meet Victor.
As one does, yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, that's a whole other interview. But I arranged to go meet Victor for lunch, and to talk about the Pescatons, the audio.
Yep.
Done.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd hop, skipped, and jumped through this thing about Pescatons because I wanted to talk to Victor about Timeslip, and he said that he lost track of it because he kept an interest in the series long after it had finished. And he said that he didn't know who owned the rights, but I know eventually they did end up back at Carlton, as was.
Yeah.
Because again, if you got the Carlton set, you know that I curated the release.
Yes.
I worked on it. When we were doing the website, that's where all of this kicked off. Really, when I wanted to do the website. I got in touch with Carlton, as was, and I got official certification, authorization to produce the website. So the website is where it says it's the official Timeslip website.
It truly is.
Yeah.
Now, is the website still going, right? Is it timeslip.co.uk or?
It's .co.uk and .org.uk. It's recently Peter Auld has recently taken over the physical running of it, and they're putting it together. He worked very closely with Andy Thompson,
who does amazing work.
Anyway. Yeah, I'm going to put a shout out to Andy now.
Please do.
Plug.
Please do.
Check out his Twitter. Follow him on Twitter because the guy just he's a very close friend. So, but the guy is out there with his ideas. The stuff he comes up with, it is great.
It is.
So Andy, he'll correct me if I'm wrong. Andy Drews, if you want to follow him on Twitter, because the stuff that he comes out with, the guy, I worry about him sometimes because the stuff that he gets is just so left field. But Andy and Peter worked on the website. It was dormant, shall we say, for a number of years for technical reasons, but it's been revived now.
Yeah, it certainly is. And just give me one quick second here. It is definitely. Here we go. It is Andy Drews. So definitely go check it out. I mean, you're going to see in his banner all the amazing, stuff that he does, and he's also and I know this that he has, because he shared with me also that he had worked on and I think he might continue to do so, work on the Doctor Who Blu-ray releases as far as help cleaning up some of the files that Richard Bignell is doing, if I'm not mistaken.
He's finger in many pies, Andy.
Yep.
Very talented guy.
So, and to get back to the episodes for Timeslip, I do know, because I visited the ITV archive, not in Perryville, but the main archive, and I can't for the life of me remember where it was. And I spoke with the head of the archive there, and because there was, and I'm sure this is the case still today, that people are like, well, we think that their color tapes might still exist, but we just, they're lost in the system or whatever else.
Yeah.
And that doesn't seem to be true.
There's the only tape that I absolutely know its fate is the color episode, because it was digitized at the BFI.
Right.
And we've got a contact in the BFI, and he said because obviously, I mean, this is kind of a little bit naughty, but I said to the contact, what's going to happen to the tape when it's digitized? And he says it's got to be destroyed, because I wanted to get my hot little hands on it personally,
Right. Why would it need to be destroyed?
I think it's sad for precisely that reason, so it doesn't get into the wrong hands. It probably, as the legend about the Wicker Man, the missing reels, it ended up at landfill, and there's the built freeway over it. So I don't know quite what happened to episode 6 of Timeslip, but I know they had to.
Thank you.
Destroy it. So
Before we move on, why don't we make a little bit of an announcement. Oh, hold on a second. Andrew is correcting me, and we'll get that in here real fast. Andrew says, I only helped out with season 12 Blu-ray as Richard Bignell needed some help with the images of the BBC archive material. At the time, he didn't have access to clean scans of the documents, and there was a deadline to meet. Fair enough. I just know that you when I put out the podcast about that episode, about season 12, as it happens, I know that you and I talked a little bit about that, and I know that Richard gave you a shout out during that. So thank you for the correction on that. Why don't we do a little bit of an announcement for those? I'm really excited about this. Some of you just might be like, well, this is it. And that's fair. But this is what we have going on at the end of September. So check this out, please.
Hi, everyone. This is Spencer Banks, inviting you to join myself, Cheryl Burfield, and Greg for the archive events Timeslip, 28th of September, 7 p.m. UK time.
So basically, I mean, that wasn't exactly the longest video ever recorded. Basically, what we're doing on the 28th of September, which is the 52nd anniversary of the first episode of Timeslip, we are having a live online event, just a Q&A with Spencer Bakes and Cheryl Burfield. We have, I mean, I know that many people have met them before, which is pretty awesome. But this is for people who for anybody, but especially for people who haven't met them, who who don't live in the UK, or people who can't get to a Timeslip event or something. We're having them. We're doing an online event, and yeah, it's going to cost some money. And I'm putting that link, the Eventbrite link, into the comments right now. But we're paying them a little bit of money to take time out of their day. We think it'll be a lot of fun. Your questions can be answered. And this is the start. This is the first time I've done an event like this. And basically what we're hoping to do is more events. I have I have a number of people lined up that's part of Doctor Who, part of British comedies. We're talking possibly Allo, other people like that doing stuff just like this. So I'm hoping that you'd all consider to take part in this, because doing so means more. And it's a really fun way to get access to people who may not be completely accessible. So consider it, please, folks. I put the Eventbrite link into the chat. We're going to talk about it a little bit later. But, once again, I have to publicly thank Steve for all of his work. He did so much to help me put this together, that I really thank you so very much for doing everything, Steve. It really, I couldn't have done it without you.
Well, I don't take much. Well, as you can tell, I don't take much persuading to do anything Timeslip related. So I'm happy to help.
I mean, you just were so quick to help and stuff. You put a lot of energy into it, and guided me in areas that I just didn't know about. And so I just really am grateful for it. And I think this will be a fun time. With that little bit with Spencer was recorded yesterday, and we, that was like 10 seconds, right? But I mean, him and I spoke for probably about 15-20 minutes. And it was really cool. I mean, immediately it's just like suddenly it's like this guy is extraordinarily kind, and he's just a nice person. I mean, what it's like when you get people's energy right away. It was like, gosh, this guy's engaging, and we're an ocean away from each other. And you can already feel he was just really nice. So I'm really looking forward to this. And for those who are interested to know, Cheryl and Spencer are going to be, it's not like how Steve and I are going to be. They're going to be on screen together. Cheryl's actually traveling to Spencer's house, and they're going to be on screen together. So it's not going to be a weird interaction. I mean, the only weird interaction is going to be that I'm going to be on there. I'm going to be asking the questions. I'm going to keep things going. But I'll tell you all, What's going to be nice about it, though, is during the event, it's probably going to be more like this, so that people can enjoy, you know, the talent, such as Steve, for example, than having to see, you know, to see this. So we're just being honest today, but that's what we're doing. So, folks, please consider doing it. If we don't get enough people, we may not do others. I mean, you know how that works. It's just kind of how it goes. I mean, and also, if you take part or anything about it, you have feedback, just let me know too, because all I want to do is make this work. So we'll talk about it again, but we have other things to talk about. I'm just going to jump around, okay, Steve, because I have some comments, and I think that it's interesting to talk about some of these, because this is everyone's program. It's not just mine. Dave says a reboot with 2 original stars would be a thing, and there was something that was kind of similar to that a number of years ago. Should we show that clip and then talk about about reboots and whatnot?
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you have the network set, you will see this, but take a look at this clip.
Liz. It's good to see you after such a long time.
Is it? It's been over 30 years, Fraser. The time barrier business is behind us. Dead and buried. Isn't it, Simon?
What's the point of dragging us out here? It doesn't work for us now. The naval station's gone, the time barrier's gone with it.
Unfortunately, the past has a nasty habit of catching up with us. I thought you better have this.
What is it?
This file contains Charles Trainor's original report on the whole St. Austell incident. Remember the interviews and debriefings at the ministry?
So, and now Noel, he's just like, can you please put up the link after the, I will put it up on, trust me, you will know about this event going forward. Now that we did this, you will be sick and tired of it. And yes, I will definitely put it out there. So, and I'm just kind of looking around, because everyone's name is coming up here. Dave, once again, who was the one who asked about the reboot. He has not seen this. He's not seen that clip. So why don't we back up, talk about what we just saw, talk about some other stuff, and talk about what you ever would think about a possible reboot.
Well, I'll tell you the background for the
and it's called Beyond the Barrier, right?
Barrier, yeah. It was Andy and I talked very, very long about what would happen, because if you've seen the end of the Day of the Clone, it throws down this enormous gauntlet. What happened next? And we thought about doing a sequel, but instead of doing it as a kids show, the audience would have grown up. Liz and Simon would have grown up. So do it as an adult drama. And we I talked to Spencer about it, and he said, yeah, but how?
Mm-hmm.
So what Beyond the Barrier was, it wasn't ever meant to, originally it wasn't going to be on the box set, because we just did it as a sort of a POC, proof of concept.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a bit of fun, and we all kind of chipped in with it. What you don't see in those clips is I'm doing the sound, and I am lying on the floor with a gun mic,
going back upward.
Yeah,
yep,
pointing upwards. So
I've been there, Steve. I've been there. Yep.
Yeah. So I was on sound, which is good, really. I was a great choice because I'm deaf. I'm partially deaf. I'm deaf in one ear.
Sounds perfect. Perfect. Yeah.
And I remember the day was freezing cold, because I have a cameo at the end of it, which I'm not going to tell people about, but I have a cameo in it, but you wouldn't recognize me. But I'm not going to sort of
You have
going.
to watch it. You have to watch it. Simple as that.
And it was, I say, it was never properly finished. That was the other thing. And we were doing, we were having a party at Ruth's Timeslip party, and it was we put it on and showed it at the party, and everyone thought it was kind of funny, and you know, it was cute. But Andy and I wrote a script, and we sort of hurried it off. It wasn't, we didn't craft it. It wasn't a finished article. And we went along to shoot it. We went back to the original location, as you saw in the clip. We got Ian involved. Ian was just an absolute gem.
We got to talk about him, yeah.
And Terry Scoble, who played Miss Stebbins in the original series, she came back. So it was all the original cast. The only exceptions were my now ex-wife has a cameo. She's walking away from the camera down the corridor, and I say I get the cameo. But it was never. I never liked the ending. I didn't like the ending. Ruth didn't like the ending, so we were going to go back and do it, and we couldn't because Ian he got sick, so we couldn't do it. He lost a lot of weight. He wasn't really dreadfully ill, but he lost so much weight that you couldn't have done the continuity because we shot. Some of it was shot actually on location in London. And all of the interiors, the office scenes, they were shot at Shepperton Studios. We shot those at Shepperton. And we also, we shot some of the documentary there as well. So we had a busy day that day. So we got this thing and Jeff took it away to edit it. And we put the original theme music on it, and you know, we had a lot of fun with it, but we never intended it to be released. And when Network contacted me and they asked me to curate the new set, the one that Greg's got,
because I buy everything.
So, I had to be persuaded to put it on there because.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Andrew Pixley, who wrote the book. I was corresponding with Andrew, and he knew about it, and I'd sent him a disc of it, and he says, "You really ought to get that on the set." And I said, "It wasn't finished. It's not very good. Technically, it's not very good. The script could have done with at least another draft." But anyway, you persuaded me to do it. And people seem to like it. But it cleared the way. The idea was what happened next. It kind of was answered because a few years ago, Big Finish did two sequel stories. But they were good. If you look at the writers they got, they were excellent. And
really fast, sorry, Steve. Yes, the DVD and Pixley book are still available. I actually just checked networkonair.com today, and it's still there, at least through the network site.
Yes.
And there's a buy one get one free going on with network right now. Anyway, I think.
So, yeah. I kind of lost my thread.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. That's because I'm not very good at talking to people, and I'm interrupting you all the time. No, because you're talking about talking with Andrew Pixley about putting the show on the proof of concept. Not thinking it's very good, but he's urging you to consider putting it on.
So we did, and I say people seem to like it. But I say it was Andy and I sat down and we knocked out a few ideas about where it could have gone in the intervening years, and we liked the idea that there'd be a reversal of roles, that Simon had realized that science was going in the wrong direction.
Mm-hmm.
And he became an eco warrior. He was still a scientist, but he was on the side of the planet, if you like.
Yeah.
Whereas Liz would have become a bit more like Beth, the icebox Beth, although she wouldn't have realised it, but she'd kind of drifted in that direction. So we like the idea of kind of swapping places. But the thing that we wanted to address was, again, this is kind of spoilerish. When Trainer gets sucked into the time barrier, the clone at the end, that I say that was the gauntlet it threw down. What the hell happened? Because he was on the other side of the time barrier. So something must have been going on. What was it? And we came up with a storyline called The Night of the Master Plan. And we were kind of going down the road of looking at ideas for current ideas. And we got global warming. But there was also something which is not really talked about, called global dimming, which means there's so much crap in the atmosphere that it affects the amount of sunlight that filters down. A bit like you would in the nuclear winter sort of scenario.
Sure, absolutely.
So it was going to be permanent night, and the human race had moved underground. But the other one was the age of the age of the flood, where sea levels would rise because of melting ice caps, and the world had. Big chunks of the world would end up underwater. So we've thrashed out a few storylines about what we want to do. But the problem was, of course, getting people interested in them. It just didn't happen. But Big Finish, when they came along, and that was a lot of years later, they got the clout to be able to produce a sequel, which they did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did you have any part in that? Any of the stuff that Big Finish had done? And
no.
Thank you, David, for that.
No, I didn't. But I was invited to the recording,
mm-hmm.
and I'd not seen a script, so I just showed up at the studio and I just watched what they were doing. Approved of the casting, thought it was very good. But I didn't know what the story was or how it was going until I actually I got sent the box set, so I could actually listen to them. No, I had no involvement, but I was invited to the recording.
Now, are they done with doing those through Big Finish, or is there more planned?
I think it's in if we want to be optimistic, I'd say the future of it's in abeyance at the moment. If you want to be a little bit more realistic, I don't think they're going to make any more.
Okay. And we're working out with that event for people who are part of that event who want to pick up stuff. Big Finish and I are working out to see if there's a way to get a really good deal for those who haven't picked those up yet. But we'll be announcing that closer to the event itself. As far as the series itself, back in and I'm gonna put up a comment here. I'm sorry. I'm gonna a couple comments. I think those trump anything I want to say. First, my good friend Chuck, how well did the range sell? That would be telling of what the future is. I think we just kind of answered that. Probably didn't sell quite as well as they wanted. Would you think?
Well, I mean, the world economy took a hit, didn't it, with COVID, and I really don't know. I say I was so far outside of this, and so was Spencer and Cheryl were as well. that I really don't know, but it could be that it didn't sell very well. It could be that I don't know.
It's tough. It's also tough, isn't it? Where, it feels like maybe some things might rest for a while because they have so many different ranges going on as well.
Yeah. Well, you get on a broader sense, there's always the law of diminishing returns, isn't there? The more you do something, the less interesting it becomes to people. I don't think Big Finish has spread itself too thin, because they've got diversity in what they do. There's a lot of different sorts of things. But I think with the best will in the world, Timeslip probably wasn't their A game. They've probably got other things that were going on. So,
well, and John says, he says that Big Finish, in his humble opinion, seemed to take the whole time bubble concept to a much deeper level than the original show ever did. In some ways, perhaps it could be said it was heading more towards the Peter Farrelly had in mind in his intros. Would you agree with that?
I briefly spoke to Andrew Smith, who wrote the first of the Big Finish things.
Sure.
Right, I'm gonna come right out and say what I think. This is just my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't think that the people who were behind it on Big Finish really grasped exactly what Timeslip was about. I don't think they really got it. For a start, the biggest misnomer in Timeslip is the title. Nobody travels through time in it. There is no time travel in Timeslip. And Big Finish treated it as time travel series. And they it's very, very complicated, but the other thing with Timeslip, and I'm kind of going off a bit here, everything that happened, well, as you know, Greg, when you talk about Doctor Who, fans love continuity.
Yeah.
And I was always amused by Terence Dicks saying, in the way that Terence did, well, continuity is whatever I can remember when I'm writing it. That was it. It's whatever I can remember at the time. But with Timeslip, continuity was everything. It was continuity. That was the whole thing. The whole thing hinged on past events, and so everything that happened in the series, in the TV series, was relevant to the kids. Everything hinged around either things that happened to them or things that happened to their parents. Everything was skewed around that. The time barrier was where it was because Frank had been stationed there during the war. So everything knitted together. And it seemed that Big Finish didn't grasp that. Spencer said, and forgive me, Spencer, if I'm dropping you in it. He wanted to know exactly what I said previously. What happened to Trainer? What was Trainer's legacy? What happened on the other side of the time barrier? And they just didn't seem to. Yeah, fine. They took it in their own direction. That's great. No problem. And there was nothing wrong with it. Say, in Andrew Smith and Mark Platt, you've got two absolutely outstanding writers.
Yeah.
Great writers. But I just think they were given the wrong steer on what they should be writing.
Do you think some of that might have had something to do with the fact that if you have two things happening, and maybe it's been covered in the Doctor Who releases 100 times. To be very honest, I don't listen really to any Big Finish releases, not due to quality or anything, but more due to just the sheer quantity of it. Do you think that it could have had something to do with the fact that the way that at least I've seen some of Timeslip is the way that that the television series could project time a little bit differently? And I guess maybe this might only really fit in with Wrong End of Time, where there's two timelines happening at the same time on screen at the same time. I guess that's really only in Wrong End of Time, though. So I guess that blows that away.
No, well, no, you can't. I actually wrote an essay on that very theme, because in The Wrong End of Time, Liz comes back to the present, 1970, and Simon remains behind. Now, Liz has a whole night and a good part of the next day this side of the time barrier, where on the other side of it, in 1940, she arrives back in the same evening, same night. So there's a kind of there's a sort of an independence of fluidity, if you like,
sure,
in it. So no, that's a good point.
And then there's been a couple talks about streaming. Let me see here. I think it was because the names aren't showing up here. Dave had said that that it's streaming on BritBox, but the UK BritBox, at least last year it was. Maybe it's still not. I've had my friend Dawn. She had sent me a note asking, being a U.S. citizen, being in the U.S. citizen or not, if it's streaming over here in the U.S. Folks, I don't think it's streaming in the US at the moment. I don't think it's ever streamed, but it is available through A&E on DVD. But then you're not going to get the Beyond the Barrier or the documentary, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah. Well, I worked on the A&E set as well.
Of course you did. Why would I not think that?
And that came out quite a while before the network set did,
but after the Carlton
set,
right?
There's a very, very truncated version of the documentary on the A&E set.
Got it.
Which wasn't edited by Jeff Smart. Jeff had got personal problems going on at the time, so it was edited by somebody else. So there are a couple of errors in it.
Sure.
So I wouldn't, folks, buy the A&E set for the episodes, but don't take any notice of the documentary, the short version on there, because it's not very good.
Now there's so much that we can talk about, and folks, we're not going to be on forever here today, but we'll have Steve back also for more conversation. I do want to get to some clips, or not clips. Sorry, we do want to get to clips, but comments. A lot of people are putting in comments, which I love. Noel says, "I just got the deluxe set brand new on eBay for £39, as network doesn't sell the deluxe box set anymore." I did not know that. I guess what I saw on network is just the standard, just the set, no book, right?
Yeah, I remember now. Yeah, it was supposed to be a limited edition, but if you dig around, you can find the full set.
Noel did. £39. I don't think that's a bad price for it. It's a great set. And as we talk about, first of all, we have the Andrew Pixley book, which is that the same cover? Oh, it is. I suppose it is a complete, like, trying to be the same cover as
Network have a habit of that. They did it with the UFO set as well. It looked like one of the UFO novelizations, and Network do that. So the company is unashamedly run by people who are fans. So
this is where I was getting confused, because I'm like, well, actually the cover photo is the same. This is where I was getting confused. It takes a while for me, folks. So that is good news. I mean, but I mean, and I will always be the one to say, get the deluxe set of these things if you can. I mean, that's just the way to go. And this is, I mean, people who are part of this know that anything that Mr. Pixley writes is pretty incredible. I mean, the Monty Python set, each book, what is about 200 pages or something like that, is absolutely ridiculous. So Michael Seeley, who's challenging me, he says that the novel had a red cover. Not this novel. I know that there's a couple different.
Yeah, there's Japan had a junior imprint called Piccolo, and they produced a version which is identical apart from the red cover.
Yeah,
I think even the number the ISBN's the same as well, so there's nothing to tell them apart.
Now that's something we should do a live on. I mean, this may have no interest to you, but do a live on Pan's People. Now that I'm interested in. My favorite Ruth though passed away. About 4 years ago or something.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, a couple more comments here. Let's see. Andrew Humphrey says, like Steve, I also watched it at age 6. One thing that gripped me from the start is that the time shifts are only a decade or two or even less. And I'm just going to interject. Like, for example, what is it? Year of the Burn Up is 1990, right?
Yeah.
The idea of, imagine that's 32 years ago. The idea of meeting your young parents or yourself as an adult was mind-blowing to me and very different from the other time travel shows. Back to the Future learned something, and he's absolutely right, isn't he? That it's not time travel of like you can go anywhere in time. You're stuck in you're kind of an insular, and that you're kind of you're it's always the same players.
Yeah, it's the interesting thing. Ruth was not 100% convinced that Back to the Future wasn't stolen from Timeslip. I don't think she was entirely serious.
Sure.
But it's when Timeslip was made, the war had only been over for sort of 25 years.
Isn't that something?
So the Timeslip was twice as long, from then to now. So as it was from the end of the war, and I remember. Think 1990. I mean, there's just something about it. It just sounded futuristic.
I mean, there's a whole TV series with Edward Woodward called 1990.
Which sort of advertised as 1984 plus 6.
Yes, it was.
Which is a very good series.
Yes, it is. Check it out, folks.
And I 1990 because UFO was set in 1980, and that sounded like the future as well. It was 10 years in the future, and it's kind of amazing as you watch it. Any of these series now, how they kind of got things so hopelessly wrong about predicting the future. Although the thing that again stands out in Timeslip was the things that they did get, clones, global warming, the touch on things like the internet. So they were, they were quite prescient in that respect.
And also Dave says, "Good Night, Sweetheart" must have been influenced by Timeslip. I never really thought about it, but when you think about, I mean, this is almost like a really good example of it, because it's one space that exists for Nicholas Linhart's character to walk through, to go back in time. Only him.
Yeah, it's I liked it. Good Night, Sweetheart. I made the connections, although I thought Nicholas Linder's character was morally reprehensible. Terrible thing to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
But it was funny all the same. And that it's, well, I suppose it's any series or any concept that's about traveling through time that doesn't involve sort of police boxes and things like that, you can kind of make that.
Are there such things? No.
Sort of. I've heard. So yeah, you could kind of make those comparisons, but that's Timeslip was. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and I was saying, well, because Timeslip was made as a quota filler, ATV had to produce X amount of hours of children's TV, so it was made with that in mind, and of course they were only going to make what amounted to the first story, Wrong End of Time, which is why it's different in tone to the rest of the series.
It really is.
And I was saying to this friend of mine that all those other regions in Britain made TV shows to fulfill that quota at the same time, and they've all disappeared. Nobody remembers them. But Timeslip has stuck. You know, it's still remembered. I remembered it, so that's why I set about sort of getting involved in it. So you know, it stuck with me.
And just to clarify, I don't think any of us are saying it's a copy, but it has some very interesting. You know, there's a couple things there that's very interesting. That you know has some similarities. But yeah, no, I'm not trying to say it's a copy by any stretch of the imagination. Andrew has an interesting question, which I want to piggyback with another one after you answer. Regarding Timeslip's take on time travel, I want to ask you about J.W. Dunn's An Experiment in Time, an old textbook. Well, what do we got? What do we got here? Oh my, who is that?
Dottie.
So I'm surprised because I have one that always seems to show up on my live streams. All the live streams I do. So you know, it's at least we get one cat per live stream, even if it's not mine. At least we get one in. My Linus, I don't know where he's at. He's probably having a beer somewhere. But getting back to Andrew's question, ask about J.W. Dunn's An Experiment in Time, an old textbook about time travel theory from the 1920s.
Yeah, that was the basis for Ruth's idea.
Okay.
She read the book. This was many years prior to Timeslip. She'd read the book and it had kind of stuck with her, and it was about the idea, which sort of Peter Fairley touches at the introduction to the series, about the idea of the mind traveling in time, rather than the physical being. And he talks. I did try and read it. It's kind of a bit nuts. But I read the sort of the sort of meat and potatoes of it, the important bits, and it's talking about yes, no, and she's always there when you don't need her.
So is mine.
And it talks about dreams, prescient dreams, things, dreaming, premonition, if you like. So it was kind of. He wrote another one called Nothing Dies as well. So it was an interesting character. I don't know anything about him apart from he wrote these sort of way out books. But that was Ruth's sort of basis for Timeslip was an experiment in time, or experiment with time.
So the Peter Fairley parts of it. I'm curious about your take of them at the time, watching both the original and the 74 repeat versus now.
Well, for a start, if Peter Fairley said something, you took notice. He was the Independent Television News, ITN. He was their science correspondent. So he talked about, he was the go-to guy for the Apollo program on British TV. And the BBC had a guy called James Burke, who was a fascinating character. So if Peter Fairley was involved, it was, it led it a certain gravitas.
Right.
Though it's interesting, anyone who's watched the series, that the stuff he talks about in the intros doesn't really connect with anything that happens in the series. It's interesting stuff, but it doesn't really sort of connect with any of the concepts within the series. But say Peter Fairley was a guy you took seriously. But they got a scientific advisor. They got Fred Hoyle's son involved.
Okay. Like Fred Hoyle, who did Andromeda,
Yeah,
Ape Andromeda, and everything. Yep. Okay.
who was, of course, a highly respected physicist as well. So Ruth was keen that this was taken seriously, and her remit that she gave to Bruce was no monsters, no spaceships. This has got to be about people. And Bruce said, perhaps somewhat controversially, if you're a Doctor Who fan, but he said, I think at that point we'd all had quite enough of Doctor Who, which it's probably stretching it a bit, but yeah, I guess what he was getting at was we'd had enough of, or we didn't need any more.
I was just going to say, it can't all be Doctor Who.
No, that's it. He was taking it in a different way, a different direction.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then because he's not part, Peter Farrelly is not part of the last two stories. Why was he not included? I
haven't the foggiest notion why he wasn't included. I think well, when you look, when I look at Timeslip, what I see is you see the wrong end of time, which sort of stands on its own. It's as we said, it's a different kind of feel to it. And then you've got what I call the big future stories. You've got Icebox and you've got Burn Up, and they're the ones that everyone remembers because they're the ones with all the exciting visuals and things going on in them. And then you've got the Day of the Clone. But Icebox and Burn Up are different sides of the same coin. It's the different projections of the future.
Yeah.
So I guess there was nothing really that much more that he could say for it. Maybe he could have used it for Day of the Clone because that was slightly different in tone. But again, there's not really a lot of as far as the concept of the time barrier and the slipping in and out of these projections. There's not really a lot more that you could have said about it. It kind of established it, so that's probably why they didn't use him.
Now, let me see if I can find this here real fast. It's just funny because I've seen this. Well, let's do this first. A more serious question. Fred wants to know, what did you think of the Timeslip comic strip and look-in the 1970s, which we use a little bit of the art at the opening of the program?
Absolutely love them. And we were lucky enough to meet Mike Noble, the guy that actually drew them. Mike was actually invited to ATV Elstree, which is where the studio where they shot the series, so he could do some preliminary sketches. So he was there, and then many years later, as in myself, Charles Spencer, and Andy, and my ex-wife, and I can't remember anyone else went, but we were invited to it was ostensibly a comic convention. It wasn't a TV one, but Mike Noble was going to be there, and the guy who was organising it thought it would be really great to reunite Mike Noble with the Timeslip kids. So they're all, that's another thing, they're always referred to as the kids, no matter how old they get.
Yeah, still are, right?
Kids. And he asked me to chair the panel. So I got to interview Mike as well. But the strips were great. They really were. And Mike Noble's artwork. Another one of our associates, because in past projects, which is sort of our little production company, is a guy called Richard Smith. Richard is a fantastic artist, and he got to know Mike Noble. And he commissioned Mike, and I can't show you because the artwork's upstairs. He commissioned Mike to do, this was in 2004. Andy will correct me if I'm wrong. He commissioned Mike to do a brand new piece of Timeslip art in the style of the looking strips. And Richard got the original, and he did two, or I think he did two copies. I've got one, and Andy's got one. But yeah, it was an antidote for the withdrawal symptoms of not being able to watch it. It was, Mike's artwork was just beautiful. It really was. It was fantastic.
So, moving through some stuff real fast. I'm trying to find some comments here. First of all, I laughed as see if I can find this again. I think it was Dave that says here, I don't fancy Nicholas Lyndhurst, but I had a huge crush on Cheryl when I was a kid. And I find that a lot of people had problems with that as they got older, because they're like, they fancied a girl in a television show that was a kid, but she actually was 18, wasn't she, when she did the program?
Yeah. Well, they were both rapidly growing up. You look at Simon, and he's in the wrong end of time, and it's this squeaky voiced little kid. By the time you get to sort of Day of the Clone, he's shot up by about 6 inches, and his voice has deepened. But I'll tell you a funny story about fancying Cheryl, because I was in love with Cheryl when I saw it. And we were down at a convention in Taunton, which is in the southwest of Britain. And we'd been invited. It was a convention that was actually organised by Fred Clark, Arthur C. Clarke's brother. And we did a link up. Well, they did a link up. I wasn't involved in organising it with Arthur C. Clarke. So it was kind of a big deal. And we got invited to this convention with Cheryl and Spencer, Ian Fairburn, Ruth was there, and I went, Andy went, and our respective spouses. So there was a lot of people.
And Steve, keep talking. I gotta step out for 1 second, but I'll come back in 1 second. Keep talking, everyone, please.
So we all met up for dinner on the sort of first night we were there. Andy will remember this story. And we were sitting around having dinner, and Lynn, Spencer's wife, Lynn, said to me, she says, what was it that attracted you to Timeslip? And I thought, well, I'm not just going to give the pat answer that it was really well written or anything like that. And I said, I was in love with, I wanted to marry Liz, and I wanted Simon to be my best friend. And Lynn looked at me and she says, I think that's the saddest thing I've ever heard. So, so much for the Waltons moment. But yeah, I got that was part of the attraction, that I got a real thing about Cheryl. It was Cheryl, Diana Rigg, and Yvonne Craig, who played Batgirl. And out of the three, the only one I never got to meet was Diana Rigg. And here's Dottie again. Oh. So yeah, there was I've been very fortunate, because I've met quite a few of the people that I admired. So I've been very lucky like that.
Oh yeah.
But I make things happen. I don't just sit around and wait for somebody else to do it. So
no, you don't. No. Also, Noel wanted to know if there's any chance, do you think that the Look in Comics could ever get a re-release?
I think there's there might be rights issues with this. And I know they reprinted, they did some faux annuals a few years ago, sort of like the best of looking. but I don't know. I honestly don't know whether there's a market for it for doing anything like reprints or anything like that. I think it's comics. The comic side of it is something Andy would probably know better than me about the comic side of things. But I know that the rights, because Looking magazine obviously is long gone, it's defunct, and it was owned by the TV Times, which is the listing magazine that we have over here, like TV Guide. But that has changed hands a few times. Again, Andy's much more knowledgeable about this than I am. Oh yeah, that's right.
And that's for the first episode.
Yeah, that's you've noticed in the photograph that's a rehearsal shot
because they're not wearing the right costumes.
Spencer's not got his glasses on, and Cheryl's in her street clothes. So there's quite a few of those that turn up.
That's something. Also, we have a couple technical questions, but I want to also maybe show some clips. How are you doing for time, Steve? Are you holding up?
As long as you like.
Okay. Let's see here. I think this is an interesting question, and I want to show some clips too. But do you think that the black and white episodes work for the series, or do you think the color works better for the series if they could be found? I mean, let's just say even if they couldn't, I mean, finding them or not, let's take that out of the equation. Do you think it works very well in black and white?
For me personally, it kind of does, because the first time I saw it was in black and white. So it was up until 1974. I'd never seen it in color. The only thing I would say would be if they did any work on it, because I know that there was some talk about some years ago about chroma dot recovery.
Sure.
But the chroma dots, they are black and white recordings and it was a black and white signal, so there's nothing to recover.
No chroma dots on the prints?
No. Well, none that with anyone's been able to see.
Okay.
But and to be honest, that isn't the deal breaker for me. What I would like to see, I'd like to see the whole series motion interpolated, fired.
Sure.
I would like that because you get the location stuff, you get that immediacy back, which is a big thing for it. So.
Yeah, which really made it stood out back in the day, I'm sure.
Yeah, it really did. Yeah.
Let me play a quick clip of what I thought why the series looked best in black and white, and this is a clip that doesn't have a whole lot going on to it, but it's from Day of the Clones, from episode 1. And what I like about it is just like, especially when Simon pokes his head into the with what the room that the scientist is working, I just think this plays really well. It's a little bit longer, but take a look.
This is R1. This is R1. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Training period number 4 is about to commence. Walk slowly. Walk slowly, please, ladies and gentlemen.
You know what I like about that clip, Steve, is that as a child, and I don't know about you, we'd sneak around doing stuff, whether it be like my mom took me to a doctor's appointment, or I'd wait for my sister to do the doctor's appointment, and you'd explore, and you'd be maybe on a floor that you didn't think you should have been on. Nothing as serious as that by any chance. You'd do the kind of like the, be up against the wall, kind of shimmy your way through, and maybe look in areas that maybe you know that you're not supposed to, but that's kind of the thrill of it. And it's just like, as a kid, and you're seeing other kids do that. I mean, there's something really kind of like you could relate to it in some way. I mean, the stakes are higher with what Simon is doing, but it's still like, okay, I did that too a little bit.
Yeah, well, it kind of relates back to what I was saying about the kids were treated like adults, and they were doing adult things. They were getting themselves into sort of potentially pretty sort of tight situations. And what happens to, for instance, what happens to Liz at the end of Burn Up, which time flows into Day of the Clone. That's pretty nasty. But they weren't afraid to sort of tackle things like that. But yeah, there's a sense that you were in there doing it, and that's what I'd do if I was in that situation.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get that totally. Yeah,
it's really interesting. Should we take a look at a couple other clips? Because I know there's a couple people who haven't seen the program before. Kind of get at least for a tone to kind of see what some of this what we're talking about here, I guess. Let's take a look at from the first story that's made up of 6 episodes. This is a from the cliffhanger from episode 5. So it's it's kind of spoilery, but it's really good. It's shot very well, and it's edited together very well. Take a look at this.
Leave him alone, you... Come on, Liz, we must get out of here. Fraser, kill us.
Out!
She's been hit. He shot her. Killed her.
And this is going to be a great example of seeing Simon's voice change, because it is very squeaky, isn't it?
Yeah.
He shot her. He's like,
yeah, that was I remember that so well, because I just thought, how the hell are you going to get out of that? Because you shot one of the characters, and Simon said, you killed her. Although I thought that's license. You always say that somebody gets shot in a TV show,
right?
But I still thought, how they're going to get out of this?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But again, it's kids in dangerous situations. Even in kids shows back then, kids didn't get shot. It just didn't happen. And they weren't afraid of tackling those sort of things. They went there.
That is really true. I never really thought about it. Yeah, they don't shoot kids. I mean, but I feel like, though, that's kind of something that a lot of, not even British television, but a lot of children's television back in the day, and they weren't shooting kids, I'm just saying, but it didn't seem to be so much like now. It feels like it's so careful in how it approaches everything, so that no one's offended, no one is traumatized by anything they watch, which I understand. But I mean, this was like, yeah, it's a kids program, but I would never look at this as a kids program, to be very honest. It has children in the lead, but that's different.
It got a Ian, as I said before, we went live. Ian never threw anything away. He never tossed anything out, and he got a review from the stage. Now this is interesting because Ian, this was reviewing the first episode, and of course Ian himself didn't come into it until the third story, and he'd seen this clip, and it's review of the first episode, and he kept it from the stage. So this is sort of the trade paper for actors, stage and television today. And the review, if you read it, they're not reviewing this as a kids program. This is a piece of adult entertainment. Everything about it was a class act. It wasn't silly, it wasn't spoofy, it wasn't run around. It was taken very, very seriously.
It's, like, say for example, take a look at a possible contemporary like Freewheelers.
Yeah,
Freewheelers, it's an action adventure, but there is something a little bit more grandiose about it, in the sense of, like, they're not over the top villains, but they kind of are. It's like the situations are a little bit more like no, they don't have to, they might have to worry about something, but no one's going to get shot.
Yeah, there's we were looking again, Andy and I, we were looking at doing something based on Freewheelers, a documentary, but nothing like anything that we did for Timeslip. And we realised when we watched it how much you watch Freewheelers, and it relies on coincidences, plot repetition. And I know Chris McMaster, it was when he was writing it, if he could get access to a chieftain tank, it went in the next episode.
Yep.
That's the way that they work. It was very fast moving. It was very exciting, but it was a piece of fluff, really. It wasn't, there was no depth in it. They weren't dealing with concepts. All of the villains tended to be very, not quite mustache twiddling, but they weren't far off. But it did what it said on the tin. It delivered. It was exciting. You wanted to watch it. But Timeslip was completely, as I say, there was a lot of shows that were made around the same time that just vanished, that just don't exist anymore. Or if they exist, the tapes or the films are sitting on a shelf in some archive gathering dust.
What do you think of this comment from Mr. Seeley? What put me off children's drama as a kid was the presence of angry adults who generally turned to violence. I found them far more terrifying than anything fantasy. There was too much of that in real life in those days. Do you think Timeslip fell into that at all, or do you think that was that's something different than this? The violence in Timeslip, such as it was, as we've just seen in the clip, it's contextualized for a start. There's a payoff. What happens next? Yes.
And I don't think particularly sort of kids TV at that time. You got stuff where, I say, you would get kids who get into a mischief, to get into a situation. It happened in Freewheelers. The amount of times that Wendy Padbury must have been caught and tied up in it,
Right? Yeah.
It kind of it begged belief, really. So I think as you were saying, Greg, about the way TV's made nowadays, it's done kind of differently. And some of these people take a bit more care about thinking about these things, what sort of an effect it's going to have on kids. So I say we've applied a Timeslip, it doesn't really count there. And again, because the kids were treated as on a level with the adults. And there's some nasty things that happen in it. The Liz's abduction at the end of the Year of the Burn-Up is not, no matter how you slice it and dice it, that is not good. Trainer kidnapping her.
Yeah.
That is, you can't put a positive spin on that, but then you find out at the end why Trainer is the way he is, the way he acted. But even so, you wouldn't get the chance to put that case today. They'd stop you straight away. So no, we're not having girls being chloroformed and carried off and locked in rooms. Not in a kids show. That's not going to happen.
Were you leery of Trainer from the start?
I didn't like him. There was something odd about him. What people have to remember, of course, is if you look at Dennis Quilley, the way Dennis Quilley looked in 1970 was how you look at Trainer in 1940. Dennis Quilley had to age up for the rest of the series. He had to play older. So whenever you saw Dennis on TV, gradually he turned into Trainer. He turned into this guy that you saw. But Trainer was, it's explained at the end. I say no spoilers. It's explained in the end.
Yeah.
But he wasn't. There was something very, something about him that made you uncomfortable as a kid. I think probably he was a little bit too like the principal, or the headmaster of the school. And he was an authority figure. He was a commander. He was a naval, ex-Navy.
Yeah.
So but you were encouraged to sort of boo and hiss a bit at it.
Absolutely.
So that was that sort of character. Yeah.
Changing gears a little bit, I think this was Dave that wrote this on a technical detail. Were the recordings of Timeslip studio recording times different to your average BBC 7:30 to 10 p.m. recordings, which precluded child actors? I guess the question is, did that change? Like, were there special recording procedures in place because they were but were they children? I mean, Spencer was, right, but Cheryl wasn't.
I think Spencer took leave of absence from school to do Timeslip, and again, forgive me, Spence, if I'm dropping you in it. He never went back.
Oh,
he didn't
something for the 28th. I think that needs to be talked about.
Yeah, I don't think he went back. I'm pretty sure he didn't. And that's only because he was of an age where he didn't need to go back legally. He didn't need to go back. So I don't think there was. It's not like they were dealing with sort of 6 and 7 year olds.
Yeah, exactly.
These were young adults, and they were playing younger than they really were. So I don't ever remember the kids talking about that. It's one I'd say to field with them on the 28th. So.
Yeah, no, and we will. We certainly will. We're going to be like, Steve said that you dropped out of school. Why don't we show another clip here real fast, because we talked about black and white. Currently, that what exists is only one episode of Timeslip in color, and that is let's see, that is Time in the Icebox, and that's episode 6. And so I just wanted to play a clip of that so people could, so those who don't know, this is what the series looked like in color.
Liz?
What is it this time?
Look, I know you don't like me very much, and in many ways you've got good reasons,
Don't
but...
like you. I hate you.
Oh, be fair. Sometimes in life you have to make decisions and hope they come out for the best. You'll know about that soon enough.
But I'll never make your decisions, will I?
Then how did I come to make them? We're the same, Liz. Yet I'm like a person you could never be, and you're like someone I never was, never.
Liz, do you know what I found in there?
You haven't been in the director's office again.
I understand about the testament now. Come and see.
Stop this, Simon. This time you've interfered once too often.
Then you don't know either. All you ever did was to service that computer for Deborah, wasn't it? You never knew what it was truly for. Well, come on, you've got to see.
It's cool. You know, I do prefer, I mean, first of all, it's a weird place to be, if you will, that I prefer the black and white look to the series than the color. And I think the act of it being a telerecording makes it look more film-like, obviously, than the video does. Makes the video, to me, looks, especially a story like that that's very ambitious, sometimes looks a little cheap. But the thing is as an archivist, I would love to see it all in its actual format that it was meant to be in.
Yeah, it's the same problem that Doctor Who suffered from, is the fact you shoot anything on videotape and it's got no depth to it, you know, to look at. And Timeslip was cheap. There's no denying it. As I say, it was a quota filler, so it hadn't got a big budget. It was made. It was very stagey, which was unavoidable. You look at we looked at the fight sequence earlier. Incredibly stagey, very, very stagey. There's another scene in when they're in the field and they're trying to get back through the hole in the fence, and they're struggling completely. You'd have to be a fool not to see them, but you've got people in the foreground that and you know they couldn't possibly not see the kids. If you look at the ice box set, you look at that corridor, and you'll see scenes where they walk. It's a circular corridor. They walk all the way around the corridor to go back to where they started to make it look bigger. So yeah, it was stagier, and if you look at Wrong End of Time, it serves it to be in black and white because it was, you know, wartime.
Sure does.
So it gives it a sort of feel.
Yeah.
But when you look at the color episode, and you see all the bright colors, you know, this was the early days of color TV in Britain, so they were going nuts with it. And you see all the bright colors. It's such a shame that you can't see them now. You know, so yeah, I kind of get it. That if you look at, I mean, Burn Up again. If you ever see any of the production stills of the jungle, it looked really good. All that greenery gradually turning brown as it went on. A Day of the Clone, you could kind of get away with the black and white in that because that was set prior to, it was set in the 60s. And I say, in this country, in the mid 60s, we haven't got colour TV.
Yeah,
so that kind of lends a sort of authenticity to it. And of course, some of the episodes from Clone are black and white anyway. So.
Sure, and the sets don't really reach to that sort of, like, I mean, there's a lot of ministerial sets and stuff, you know, science or laboratories or something like that.
Yeah, but they did, you know, what they could, and as I say, the costumes were great. So I'm going to take an opportunity now to show. Yes,
because we do want to talk about this. What are we looking at here?
This is the waistcoat that Ian Fairbairn wore as Alpha 4 in the year of the Burn-Up, and this is the little handkerchief he had tucked in his pocket, and this is rather personal. This is the tie that Ian wore as Dr. Fraser in Day of the Clone, and it is actually Ian's tie. It was his school tie. And he wore this again in the mini episode in Beyond the Barrier. He wore that tie again.
Can you explain to some of us who are not who did not grow up in the UK the significance of a school tie?
it was your badge. It told other people that you went to a good school. And you know, I mean, Ian didn't go to a public school. It was a private school, but it wasn't a public school. But if you went somewhere like Eton or Harrow, you know, you even when you went off into the world of business, you still wore your school tie, because immediately it said, "Oh, this guy went to Harrow, this guy went to Eton, so he's got to be good. He's got to be the right stuff," you know. It was very so yeah, it did make a difference. Yeah, it was what they call it, the old school tie. The system is just known as, you know, the old school tie.
Right. You know, it's interesting because when I went to grade school, I had a uniform. I went to a Catholic school, but, you know, we tried to get as far away from that as possible. This is something that's worn, like you said, as a badge, as something of honor. Yeah.
Well, there's still, you go to high schools in Britain, they still wear uniforms. My old school, we had to wear a uniform, had to wear a tie. So it was a system that was very broadly abused, shall we say. It wasn't really that much reinforced, but the other schools, especially, you say you went to a Catholic school's very big on uniform.
Yes,
but it was a thing. It you know, the old school tie. It will get you places. So.
Well, now Michael says that your school uniform identified which other school is having a punch up with another locally.
Yeah, that was the thing. Well, oddly enough, Andy Thompson and I, we went to rival schools, and they were separated by a sort of a cycle track, because we were both on the edge of what they call the catchment area. So. So Andy, I didn't know Andy at the time, but he went to Noel Baker School, and I went to Shelton Lock Comprehensive. And Shelton Lock Comprehensive would run fear into the veins of anyone who lived in Derby, which is the town we're from. Not a good school, doesn't exist anymore, so I can badmouth it as much as I like. So.
Wow. We have one more clip I want to show, and then we'll talk a little bit, then we'll round it out a little bit. There's still more to talk about that we may not get to, such as Victor Pemberton per se, but that means we just can have you back if you're fine with that.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Because I mean, I don't want to rush through stuff, but I don't want to also keep it to that everyone is, you know, we did an Avengers one that took 3 hours, you know, and that was great. But at the same time, it's like, I think a couple of people off themselves. Okay. So here, one more, and this is from Year of the Burnup.
The video scanner is the only technological device we allow here. We have to for our own protection. Otherwise, we live by our own resources.
What kind of a place is this?
It's a school. A school for what are considered misfits.
Oh, here we are. Oh, it's only him again. I don't know why he keeps coming around. Can't you tell him to stay away, Beth?
No, not him.
No.
Well, I'm Liz and she's me, right?
Right.
And him out there, Simon, dear. It's you. Simon 1990 version. And he's not called Simon anymore. He hasn't even got a name. Just a number. 2957.
And this brings up a quote that Andrew Humphrey sent through earlier, and I think this kind of fits into that. He says, watching it now, some of the adult performances seem unsubtle and out of step with everyone else. But maybe it was just the Rada acting style at the time, thinking Devereaux, Jointer, and Beth, who we just saw. I have to agree with that. But, you know, the funny thing is just that scene itself, the laughter seems a little over top for me and not very real. But who pulls it off is the young one there. You know, Simon Spencer pulls that scene off very well.
Yeah, he's well. I don't know if people know the guy that played the adult Simon is David Graham, who was the voice of Parker and Brains in Thunderbird.
Sure is. Noel picked that up. Yeah, I mean, a lot of us. Yeah,
and it's one of David's rare appearances in front of the camera.
Right.
But the piece of business where Simon takes his glasses off. That was improvised. So David takes his glasses off as well. So they do it. You know, it's something that they got in common. But just some of the, I mean, somebody mentioned it came up on the caption about Devereaux, John Barron's performance.
Yeah,
that was supposed to be very awkward and strange, very weird.
Mm-hmm.
That was what the character required. And again, if you watch Icebox, it becomes apparent why he behaves the way that he does. You see a lot of TV performances from around that era that are very stagey and they're very theatrical. And it's because it is people that came from the theatre. You know, they were from RADA and places like that. So you got that. I mean, you look at the way you don't get manner performances nowadays. You get very kind of realistic performances. You don't see people acting in that way now. They don't, you know, they don't perform. They look much more subtle. And that's sort of the manner performances were kind of coming to an end then. That was kind of the tail end of it. You got into the 70s and you started to get things that you get shows like The Sweeney, which is, you know, very sort of gritty and very real looking. So yeah, that sort of acting was kind of on the way out at that point.
And I mean, goodness, that's a whole case study episode on its own between something like The Sweeney versus something that was coming to an end around the time like Dixon of Dock Green. You know? I mean, just totally, completely. I mean, same kind of, you know, category, but holy cow, you couldn't separate the two any further.
Well, it was. I mean, without weaving off topic too far,
and we're doing that. Yeah,
it was when you got to the late 60s and the early 70s. The time you got to about 1972, the last of the flywheel effect, the post-war feel-good, had kind of wound down. So you came out of the 60s and into the 70s, and the example I always use is Michael Caine. Watched The Italian Job, playing Charlie Croker. 2 years later, he's playing Jack Carter in Get Carter, and things have changed. You know, that's as I always say when you watch Get Carter, that's the side of Britain that the tourists never see. That was, you know, it's a cold and brutal film, and that sort of it's kind of set the tone then. If ever there was a brutalist film, you know, brutalist architecture, if ever there was a brutalist film, it was Get Carter.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's digressing. It's going off.
Well, I mean, but I agree too. I mean, like when I'd come over to the UK for like Christmas, because I'd stay over for Christmas a lot of times, and a lot of people thought to me, "Oh my gosh, you're going to you're going to be in London for Christmas. You're going to be United Kingdom for Christmas." They're thinking, you know, everything is basically Charles Dickens. You know, they think, you know, over here they're thinking everything is like Victorian looking stuff. Like, no, I'm going to Birmingham. And you know, Birmingham is there's some beautiful places, but there's also some very there's a diversity, there's a strong diversity in these cities that people aren't aware of, that is exactly why things don't look exactly what you see in your mind. I mean, I was just talking with a guy named Eric Luskin who did some documentaries for Doctor Who in the US back in the PBS days. And the thing is that the thing that people love, the US people love for British television, are the quirkiness, the stuff that looks what they think Britain looks like Midsummer Murders would be a good one, or Rosemary in Time, or stuff like that. But that's not what it's kind of a false idea of what this stuff looks like.
It's a fictional world.
Totally.
It's not really reflective of what Britain's really like.
Not at all.
Mind you, it's like the US. I mean, you go to Florida, and then you go like to New England, and you're in a different country.
Totally.
Totally. It's different places. You go north of London, and you're in a different world. Very different.
True, but to be fair, I think a lot of people think, when they think about Americans, at least back in the day, maybe not so much now, back in the day, they all thought of them with the voice of a Texan, and they're thinking the big oil rigs, and they all talk a little bit like this, and it's and it's like, no, that's not it at all either.
No, I whenever I've been to the States, I'm always I think the place I like most, because it had a kind of European feeling, was San Francisco. There's just something very chilled about it. It's just a nice place. The people are nice, I went to LA, and it's a conurbation. It's not even a city. It's just. I mean, it's the size of Holland. It's just too big.
Well, I mean, and considering, I mean, Los Angeles is big, but I mean, to me, it's like New York is still, obviously the largest. But when you get to like the Hollywood area, Burbank area, I mean, it's a world upon itself. It doesn't follow the rules of
I was kind of surprised, because I stopped in the Hollywood Roosevelt, and
the Roosevelt,
which was a big deal back in the day. It was a luxury hotel. Well, I tell you, it wasn't when I was stopping there. No. Hollywood it's
run down. Hollywood is run down.
Yeah, it was unpleasant, especially at night.
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
you're right. I think we're gonna get kind of wrap it up a little bit, I think. And then, unless there's something that's really pressing that you feel like that we've left out on, Steve.
Well, it's people have asked me about Amityville Playhouse, and I don't know if you've come across that, Greg.
Amityville Playhouse
or theatre. Amityville Theatre, as it's known in the US. It's not officially part of the Amityville canon. I've got to point that out.
You're talking the horror. You're talking about the paranormal.
Yeah, it's a horror movie, and it's horrible for a lot of reasons. Probably one of them because I wrote the script for it. But the reason it's significant to Timeslip is that Cheryl and Spencer are in it, and it's Cheryl's first acting role since the 70s, and they play characters called Liz and Simon, but they're not that Liz and Simon. And I was asked to write it. The producer came to me and he said, "Will you write me a horror script?" And I'd never written a horror movie before. I was one of these sort of people that liked watching horrors, but I wasn't that sort of well versed in them. The Hammers were different because they were, they sort of almost hardwired in Britain. Hammer film.
They're scary movies, not horror movies, right? I mean,
yeah, and they're colourful and they're a bit schlocky, but they're good fun. But I was asked to write this horror movie. And I said, well, I really don't know how to do that. So I sat down and I wrote what I thought would be a horror movie. And I thought I'd take it to the producer and he'd say, oh, thank you, very good, but it's not what I want. Anyway, he loved it. So that was, but I filled it with Timeslip references. There are loads of them in there. And there's a scene in it with Cheryl and Spencer. And he plays the Reverend Simon Randall, complete with dog collar. And Cheryl plays his wife, Liz Randall. And I make it clear to people they are not Liz and Simon from Timeslip. This was kind of what we call a piss take, if you like.
Sure. Yeah.
And I phoned Spencer up and I said, and I thought he'd just say no. And I said, would you do this film that I've written? And he said, yeah. And Cheryl was in it as well. And as a bonus, Leslie Scoble. So another Timeslip connection. One of the Alpha clones was in it. So I say I filled it with lots of in-jokes. If you're a Timeslip fan, you'll spot them.
Now, John Cashin says that Amityville Playhouse was brilliant. He loved it.
John, I know you very well, and I know you're just flattering me. You're blowing smoke. It's not a good film.
Well, where can I find it? I mean, I'm kind of into the paranormal, so I'd love to know where to find it.
Well, you can pick it up at, Tower Records or wherever.
There's no Tower Records where I live.
So,
is it like streaming anywhere? I'll take a look for it. You don't need to tell me. I'll take a look.
But really, it's horrible to say it, and it's an old cliche, but I did it for the money.
Well, why don't we do this? I will watch it, then we'll do a live stream critiquing it. You can show up if you want.
It is dreadful. It really is.
In the UK, so in the UK, Noel wants to know, in the UK, where can he find this film?
It's under a stone.
Under a stone. Okay, go to Stonehenge, Noel.
Under a rock.
It'll be there for you.
It's
only Dottie knows where it is. So
yeah, Dottie's seen it, and she's never forgiven me. She's never spoke to me since. So,
she knew perfect English up until that point.
Yeah. So, so there was that. I actually apologized to Spencer for that, for getting him involved in that.
He got paid.
It was an okay film, actually. I'm probably being hard on it. It was a bunch of kids. It was shot in Canada, not their scene. That was shot over here, but it was shot in Canada, and it was the director's first movie, and the kids in it weren't experienced actors, so they did the best with it. But it's we all learned a lot on that movie. So the next movie was better. So.
Well, Kimberly, who's on my personal profile page right now, she says that's on Tubi. So I'll take a look at it and write a scathing review of it later.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, just being so. So you said was there another one after that then?
Oh yeah, but it was a sort of an indirect sequel. Although Leslie Scoble plays the same character in the following film, it's called Ouija Geist.
After Ouija board.
Yeah, it's a mashup of Ouija board and Poltergeist. So it's Ouija Geist, which is a better film. It's a better movie.
Let's talk about Ouija boards right now. So got some. Here we go. Props for you right now. We could talk about Ouija boards if you like. What was the film about then?
It was Ouija Geist.
So was it based on someone using the board and having like poltergeist activity happening, or?
Yeah, it's somebody who comes in possession of a Ouija board that has got a bit of history involved in it, and as a result of sort of messing around with this board, it releases unquiet spirits in this house. So it was that was all shot over here. That wasn't shot in Canada, and it was shot on a very even lower budget than Amityville. But I was happier with it. I worked with a guy called Daryl Buxton. We wrote the script between us for that. But Cheryl and Spencer didn't have any involvement with the second film. But say Leslie Scoble did.
Ouija Geist. Okay, no, that sounds good. This is my store-bought one. I have actually a 120-year-old Ouija board upstairs, as one does. I'm kind of into that stuff, so
yes, I guess so, because I've seen a few of your other things that you've done,
and probably frightened a lot of people. All right, let's wrap this up here, and we can reconvene later so that we can have a fresh audience and we can talk about stuff like Victor Pemberton and stuff, because we didn't get to that at all.
Yeah, there's quite a lot to tell with Victor, because there was the sequel that never was, and there was Tightrope.
Exactly.
Well.
So let's do that. Let's maybe talk about that. Maybe probably not September, but maybe October and November.
Yeah,
if you're open for that.
Yeah,
I do want to play this one more time for folks to remind everyone about what's coming up. And there's another thing coming up I want to remind people of.
Hi everyone, this is Spencer Banks inviting you to join myself, Cheryl Burfield and Greg for the archive events Timeslip, 28th of September, 7 p.m. UK time.
So once again, that is on the Eventbrite. I'm going to be posting that to all social media locations soon. So please consider taking part, because we have a lot of stuff that we are planning on doing that's in this realm. But if we don't have anyone taking part, then it's not going to be viable to do. Also, folks, people have been asking me, the next Missing Believed virtual Missing Believed wipe is going to be Saturday, September 24th. We don't have a time yet. Chris Perry and myself. Some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about is in their event in October, such as Dr. Finley's casebook that I helped recover. But there is a lot more that we're going to be talking about. So please, that's going to be obviously a free online event that we're going to have everybody just to watch some clips. It'll probably just be on the Kaleidoscope Facebook page. The Spencer and Cheryl event will not be on Facebook. That'll be somewhere that anyone can access. And for those who buy tickets, we will share that. Steve, thank you very much for everything. I really do appreciate it today.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, Greg. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed it too.
Oh yeah, it's been great.
All right, everyone, thank you very much. Please continue following me at my different locations. If you want to see what's going on, especially Twitter, Facebook, whatever else, I would greatly appreciate it. Also, to the lack of a better, to pretty much panhandle here, please consider signing up for my Patreon. Patreon lets me do stuff like this, okay, and lets me do the free stuff. So thank you all very much. Steve, we're going to have you back here then soon. We have unfinished business. Sound good?
Yeah, be happy to come back. Great.
Thank you very much. Everyone, thank you very much. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great week.